This week, President Biden finally made his first joint address to Congress, a bizarro world variation on a State of the Union address in which only a tiny group of 100% fully vaccinated people showed up. And of course, all wearing masks and social distancing, despite being in a massive room with a 2-story ceiling. It was like sending a message to the entire world that our own leaders don't believe the vaccines even work. Biden spoke for over an hour. But if I had to sum it all up in a nutshell, it would be with this familiar conservative adage: the government that's big enough to give you everything you need and want, is also big enough to take away everything you have. Because that was basically what he plans to do and what his plans really amount to. In more detail, it was everything you would have expected at excruciating length. A lot of boasting about the success of the vaccination program, with no credit given to Donald Trump for helping to create the vaccines in record time through Operation Warp Speed, and already administering nearly 1 million shots a day, including Joe Biden's by the time that Biden even took office. There was a lot of talk about working together and listening to the other side, all while demonizing the other side and proposing bills that he knows half of America adamantly oppose. He claimed that by raising taxes and the minimum wage, shutting down domestic oil and gas production, and targeting the gig economy for destruction, that's the PRO Act he touted, by the way, the national version of the disastrous California AB 5 law, all things proven to actually destroy jobs. He somehow believed that we're going to create millions of new jobs doing those very things. He even said this, quote, "For me, when I think about climate change, I think jobs," end quote. He mentioned all the jobs retrofitting buildings that'll be greener and installing 500,000 charging stations for electric cars. And by the way, where will all that electricity even come from? Why, sources like wind turbines, of course. He said he sees no reason why they can't be built right here in America instead of China. Well, except they require heavy metals that now only come from China, which ironically means creating a lot of carbon emissions for the transportation to get them here. And who's going to pay for all those jobs? The government, of course. If this is a speech that had a theme song, it would be, "Don't know much about history." And it'll all be paid for with money only taken from the super rich and those big corporations. And if you're not one of those, you will enjoy endless free stuff with no downside at all, and a bill that would never come due. Now, if you actually believe that, I assume you believe in unicorns and leprechauns as well. Truly, Joe Biden's mask was finally off, but in more ways than one. We've heard all this before. It's simply the Obama years on steroids, destroying existing jobs on a promise to replace them with government-created green union jobs that somehow never appear, largely because the same liberals making these promises have made it impossible to get permits to start any major construction of anything. It's why Obama himself admitted that there were no shovel-ready jobs. And that's too bad, because I could have used a shovel during the speech. Ironically, you could only do this if you slashed regulations like Trump did, and that's one of the first things Joe Biden reversed by executive order. That is, along with destroying union jobs by killing the Keystone XL pipeline. He also wants a government program to lower prescription drug prices. And never mind that he inexplicably reversed a Trump executive order that did just that. The biggest news out of the speech was his promoting of even more massive spending and bills, which, as always, come with, "Who can oppose this?" Anyway, he actually tried to hide the actual content, such as the American Rescue Plan or the American Families Plan. And look, I'm sure there are some good things in them, like expanded child tax credits. But the names are also really a cover for a raft of government-expanding, freedom-crushing, budget-bloating programs. Some analysts pointed out that Joe Biden didn't include means testing on some, like free community college, so even kids of millionaires and billionaires could qualify. Now, if Republicans had proposed this, the Democrats would call it a giveaway to the rich. Conservatives noted that in just 3 months in office, between the COVID-19 bill that was mostly not directly related to COVID-19, the infrastructure bill that spends only a fraction of its actual cost on infrastructure, and now this new $1.8 trillion proposal, Joe Biden has endorsed about $6 trillion in new deficit spending. That's in addition to the current annual federal budget. And all of these things together, his proposals mean that we spend about $10 trillion. I hope the totally not green New Deal that he's proposing will include funding for planting 1 billion money trees, because we sure are going to need them. The GOP response to Biden's speech was given by Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, and I thought it was terrific. It was filled with inspiring personal stories, ideas for finding common ground, and much needed common sense. I urge you to watch it all. My favorite line was his description of how partisan the Democrats' infrastructure bill is. They won't even build bridges to build bridges.
Republicans support everything you think of when you think of infrastructure: roads, bridges, ports, airports, waterways, high-speed broadband. We're in for all of that. But again, Democrats want a partisan wish list. They won't even build bridges to build bridges. Less than 6% of the president's plan goes to roads and bridges. It's a liberal wish list of big government waste, plus the biggest job-killing tax hikes in a generation. Experts say when all is said and done, it would lower wages of the average American worker and shrink our economy.
He also reminded viewers that when he proposed a bipartisan police reform bill that Democrats said they wanted, they used the Senate filibuster, the one that they now call racist and want to eliminate. They used it to block it from a vote. Senator Scott said they preferred to keep the problem as a political tool rather than to solve it. You can tell how effective Senator Scott's speech was because the left was so panicked that they resorted to their standard fallback, hurling racist slurs at a black man for daring not to think the way they tell him to. Hashtag Uncle Tim trended on Twitter, a spin on the racial epithet Uncle Tom. Now, ironic since Scott even mentioned the racist attacks made on him by so-called progressives. Meanwhile, Twitter, which will censor any conservative for any reason, allowed a racist leftist hashtag to trend. Many believe that Joe Biden is a uniting figure. Maybe if all you did was listen to the way he talked, after falling asleep 5 minutes later, you dream of a unified America with a former Vice President Joe Biden at the helm. But if you stay awake long enough to hear his words, you'll realize that Biden's form of unity just looks like ignoring or suppressing anyone who doesn't get on board with his absurdly radical ideas. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel below and clicking the notification bell. If you want more of my news analysis and commentary, sign up for my newsletter. Go to MikeHuckabee.com. That's MikeHuckabee.com. It is completely free. And check out our second channel, Huckabee's Jukebox, for some great entertainment. And remember to check back here tomorrow for more videos. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.